Welcome everybody to the Tony Tonkin Show, my live feed. Already have a few people online and it's really good to see that. And I hope you join in the conversation so that we can talk about matters which matter to you. So my motto is facts matter and you matter. And so it's about trying to get the facts right along the way. And also it's an opportunity for you to talk about the things that you want to talk about. But I have posed a question which I would like us to think about answering today. And that is, the question is, will Australian politics become as toxic as the United States? I'd like to get as many of your ideas and feedback in relation to that as is possible. Mainly because my concern is that it is heading that way. One of the reasons why I spent a lot of time highlighting what's happening on Sky News is that they are the mouthpiece for the right here in Australia, the most evident, the most obvious mouthpiece that there are. There are other organisations such as Australia First and others who do tend to promote the right-wing agenda, but it's through the media coverage of Murdoch Press that we see emphatically the way the right-wing is leaning. And my whole purpose for the YouTube channel is to find a way to provide an opportunity for you to talk about the things that matter to you, and also to push back against some of the misconceptions that are presented to us in the media. And I'm not suggesting, as I said in a post I did earlier today for anybody who hasn't seen it, is that I'm not suggesting for a moment that I'm right. I don't plan to be. I don't have the answers to everything. I don't have any answers whatsoever. I'm not an expert in anything. I have a range of experiences as a social worker. I have a range of experience because I've lived to 74 years and survived. So let me know what you think, though, about politics here in Australia, whether it's moving more and more to the right or how it is that we can find a way to combat it. And the reason why this has become an interesting subject at the moment is that many of you may or may not be aware, but Albanese spoke at a conference in Liverpool to the Labour Party, the UK Labour Party. And in that speech, he highlighted the need to create dialogue, to not divide us, which is what I believe the right wing tend to do. And also, I just want to say that I think to some extent the left wing do the same, that both extremes in politics want this fight and this battle between the two extremes. And that there's this continual pushback about anyone, particularly in the United States, if anyone's aggressive, and here in Australia, if anyone in the United States, particularly if they're violent, but in Australia also, if there's violence of any description, then the emphasis is trying to find out, or to focus on, not find out, no so much, but to focus on one side versus the other. So if there's a shooting in the United States, the left wing will claim that it's the right, and if it's, or the right wing will claim that it's the left. And in many cases, it's perhaps neither. It's just young men who are disenchanted, who feel isolated and alone, who've been watching and playing too many computer games and have become entrenched into a world which really does not exist. And as a result, they've found reasons to have to push back and even kind of make a name for themselves by shooting someone that they deem is important, who has a view that's completely different to their own. These are the reasons, lots of reasons in the United States, particularly in the US because of their gun laws. I've been watching, and trying to remember his name now, Jeffries, the Australian, Jim Jeffries, the Australian comedian, on his the session that he does on gun control. It's worth watching. It's got millions and millions of views. But it explains in pure comical sense as to what it means in the United States to have these gun controls and how stupid and silly they actually are. And it's evident because during the last weekend in the United States, there were 6 mass shootings. 6. No place in the world has the number of mass shootings as they do in the United States. And here in Australia, we had a mass shooting in 1996, and we decided that the gun that was used for that was just to be banned. And we had an armistice in which hundreds of thousands of guns were handed in, guns that people should not have had. And since then, as Jim Jeffries says, it's either coincidence or it's just good planning, but there hasn't been a mass shooting in Australia since. These lessons that the United States could learn, I guess so. And the same applies, I guess, to the UK, where they don't have the proliferation of guns there as we do here. Let me know what you think about all of that. Be interested to see whatever comments you would like to make. Right, and what I'll do is, as I go through some of the ideas that we're talking about today, I will also see if I can focus on your statements, on the questions that you ask or the comments that you make, because this is the purpose of this particular live feed. I do a live feed on Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. as well with Avery, and that's a great session because Avery can talk about whatever the issue is at the time, and I can simply just manage all this stuff I've got around me. If you could ever see my studio, you'd know what I'm talking about. But there's lots of stuff that I have to manage, and it's just a bit more difficult sometimes to do it on my own. And often when I finish these sessions, I'll say to my wife, or she asks me how it was, and I'll say, well, after I do the live feed on my own, it's exhausting. But when I do it with Avery, it's so much easier because I can let him have some time to have a conversation. Which reminds me of another point that I want to make. I would like to think that if you have an issue that you think needs to be discussed, and this is not about whether it be left or right or wherever it might sit on the spectrum, or whether you just want to sit down and have a go at me for some of my views on my posts, that doesn't matter. If you've got a view and you'd like to put it forward and you'd like to have the opportunity to come onto my show to be able to express your view, I am prepared to do another day of a live feed, probably a Wednesday, when we can have that conversation. So I'll send you a link. You can come on board if you've got a camera and an audio, and we can have a chat. And you can challenge me. I'm no Charlie Kirk. I don't pretend to be and won't be. But certainly I'd like to hear from you if you've got issues that you would like to raise with me. I also like to thank one of our community, Andrew, who sent me an email the other day and highlighting. I haven't got it up in front of me now, but he was highlighting some statements I was making about Sky News and some names that I could call those in the Outsiders program on a Sunday on Sky, and the names were quite funny, but I did appreciate the feedback. So if you can email me any of the details or any of the questions you'd like to have answered, or if you'd just like to make a statement, I'm more than happy to refer to that via email if you wish. So, question of the day: is Australia becoming more and more toxic, and are we heading towards the toxicity that exists in the United States? Now, my view is that we're not there yet, because we do have a Labor in power, and we do have a federalist, a useless, a non-policy opposition as well. And I've heard rumblings at the moment that one nation may fill the void. Now, this is a bit scary. That one nation may fill that void that sits between the lack of policies that are being expressed by the Liberal and Nationals and the Labor Party, because it is evident that one nation are far further right than the Liberal Party are. The Liberals perhaps are generally, not all of them, but generally are more moderate. And so they're looking at what's happened in the UK in relation to Farage. Now, Farage's party has, at the last poll, would win a massive majority in the UK Parliament if an election was held today. Remembering also that this is just at the beginning of of Keir Starmer's term, so it's a long way to go yet. They have 4-year terms. But at the moment, Farage's party is doing damn well. And the question we need to be asking is, why is that so? What is there about Starmer's party and what is there about Farage that's allowing them to get the power or the authority, not the authority, but necessarily the popularity, I guess, that they are? And of course, one of the reasons for that is immigration. And so we need to have further conversations about immigration. If there's anybody here that would like to be able to have that conversation, then please let me know, and we could have a conversation about it on air if you so desire. And the other thing too, I think, that's worth noting is that the Labour Party in the UK have fallen on their face, not necessarily, I think, through anything that they have done, but because I'm about to reframe that. There was the expectation, I think, and this is something that we need to be aware of politically, but there was the expectation that Farage's party that the Labour Party in the UK would have the power to be able to implement immediate changes once elected, and they haven't been able to do that. And as a result, those that voted for them have turned against them because the primary issue was immigration. And Farage has been pounding that. And Farage has got his own network. He's got GB News, which sponsor him, and he's got his own show. So could you imagine for a moment what it'd be like if One Nation had their own network and Pauline Hanson had her own show and could speak solely to those people on the right? What would that mean in terms of her popularity? And I'm sure, I was thinking of this earlier today, I'm sure Pauline Hanson is sitting down there right now thinking, my God, here's an opportunity. I've been dreaming of this for over 30 years, that I could be in such a position that I could become the leading party or the leading opposition at least in terms of possible number of seats, given that she doesn't hold any seats in the lower house, which is integral. But nevertheless, Farage has done an amazing job in terms of turning around his popularity in the UK. Surely One Nation may do the same. The point is One Nation may need to replace Pauline Hanson in order to do so, and that is most unlikely. But nevertheless, these are the signs, and we need to be made aware of them, and we need to be able to be conscious of where the right are coming from. And as I said earlier, we certainly need to be able to have the conversations that we need to have around some of the policies that matter. And if you have a chance, have a look at Albanese's speech. It was a conciliatory speech. It wasn't attacking the right as the right would believe he was. It was actually just trying to tell people, well, hey, we've been successful in Australia because I adopt the policy where I just want to listen to the other side and understand what it is that they're saying, and we'll implement the policies accordingly if we can. It's quite simple, really. It's not all that complicated. After all, we do need to remember that the thing that people want most is just to be listened to and just to be heard. So I'm going to cite some things that I think are relevant, and I've got some of these items to bring up, and so I'll take some time to discuss them. And it ranges from Trump and Netanyahu, and I've got one here on, who's the other one? I'm looking at Susan Lee and Hastie. I'm looking at Freya Leach's Sky News debacle as well. I'm looking at an article about Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, and I'm also looking at Trump's America laid bare at the Ryder Cup, which was a disaster, to say the least, and is somewhat of an indicator as to what's happening in the United States. So I'll bring us to the first article. I'd be interested to know what you think specifically about this. So Netanyahu agrees to Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan. I need to say that I doubt Donald Trump would have trouble counting to 20 to start with, but I would doubt that Donald Trump has had much input into any of this, simply because the man, when it comes to intelligence, is lacking somewhat. And so someone else has put this together, but he'll take the agreement. Israel has agreed to a US proposal to end its war on Gaza. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump have announced after holding talks at the White House. The White House has released a 20-point peace plan that would encourage Palestinians to remain in Gaza, see hostages and prisoners released on both sides, and see the Israeli military end its attacks, recently labelled a genocide by UN Commission of Inquiry. And the issue, there's a number of issues there that really need to be discussed. Israel, in my view, is a terrorist organisation. Israel is holding some 6,000 Palestinians as captive. Last time there was a release. I must learn to turn off my phone. Last time there was a release, the Palestinians released far greater number, and the reason for that is they have a far greater number to release. The idea for holding children, 13-year-olds, in captive, they're sweeping people up in the West Bank. It's not all about Gaza. And I mean, I guess it's encouraging to know that they are encouraging Palestinians to remain in Gaza. The question is, would you want to stay in a place like Gaza if you had no home to go to, if food was scarce, if you were still feeling that you were encased, that you were just an open-air prison? My question really is, what is this going to look like? To what extent will the Palestinians in Gaza feel free? And I haven't seen the details, so it's open for debate. But I know that Hamas could not be involved, and that's fair enough. The PLA to be involved, I would imagine so. I did hear something that was stated that Tony Blair is to head an organisation that is going to oversee all of this. Tony Blair was responsible for lying when the UK, US and Australia went to Iraq. I don't think Tony Blair is necessarily the best person. He's tainted. Don't know what you guys think. But certainly, at least it sounds like some progress is being made. This article goes on to say, so this is a big day. You can imagine Trump saying this, a beautiful day. Mr. Trump said, potentially one of the great days ever. How does this man get away with saying this shit? Amazes me. One of the greatest days ever in civilization. I would think the ending of World War I and II was probably pretty significant. But nevertheless, that's what he says. And there's no greater person to talk about these issues than the great, the one and only, the ever powerful, the omniscient Donald Trump. The plan gives Hamas 72 hours from the time Israel accepted the deal to release the Israeli hostages held in Gaza, about 20 of whom are believed to still be alive. Israel will subsequently be required to release 250 life sentence prisoners and 1,700 Gazans detained since the October 7th attack. If enacted, the plan would then establish a temporary Palestinian governing body supervised by a board of peace headed by, I hate this bit. Tell me, folks, what experience has Donald Trump got in any of this? Zero. He builds buildings, for Christ's sake. He doesn't build nations. So how is it going to be headed? Trump has hardly enough time. Trump holds more press conferences than anybody I've ever known. He gets up late. He walks in a press conference. Other people around him are doing all the work. Trump doesn't do anything. He sends out posts, or has posts scheduled to be sent out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He's a disaster. He is a walking disaster. So how can this board of peace, I don't know where former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair would also be on the board, it also mentions that, but why would Trump be head of the board? It's just an ego thing. It's the only way I can describe it. The plan includes conditions that had previously been rejected by both sides. It is dependent on a mass agreement, though the plan itself says it would be partially implemented even if Hamas rejects it. If Hamas did not agree, Mr. Trump said Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer, Mr. Trump said. And you can see Trump already with his hand out for the Peace Prize. I tell you what, if he got the Nobel Peace Prize, being the type of crazy, stupid, inadequate, clownish man that he is, it would be an insult to the institution, to the Nobel organisation. He is a terrible and disgusting human being. So key elements of the plan, I'll read these for you. An immediate end to Israel's attack on Gaza and the gradual withdrawal of Israel Defence Forces. Sounds like a bloody good idea. Should have happened a year ago. Palestinians to remain in or return to Gaza if they choose. The disarmament of Hamas with an amnesty offered to members who commit to peaceful coexistence with Israel. I reckon Israel will plan to kill the bastards anyway. A surge of aid into Gaza to be distributed by the United Nations and Red Crescent. The establishment of a temporary international stabilisation force to oversee security in Gaza. Some sort of process to de-radicalise Gaza. I don't know how they do that. Tell me, how do you de-radicalise a country that for decades has been this outdoor prison? How do you de-radicalise the people in Gaza who have been shot, whose families have been destroyed, whose buildings have been demolished? Someone explain to me, how do you de-radicalise people who have experienced such horror? I don't understand it, and I think it's an expectation which could never be met, because those people are traumatised forever. Their lives have been turned upside down. What faith could they possibly have in any of this? And how do you? I was just thinking, if you're a kid and you've witnessed the horror that's been devastated, that's been impacted your life, where your mum and your dad and your relatives have all been killed in front of you, and you're maimed as a result of this war, how can you be de-radicalised? I'm sorry I'm focused on some sort of process to de-radicalise Gaza. I'm sorry if I'm stuck on that, but I can't see how it is possible. The hatred that you would have for your oppressor would be so intense that if they continue that oppression on you after the war has ended, would you want to fight back at some point? Because this is what happens. This is why Hamas, I suppose, did what they did on October the 7th. Which is coming up to 2 years away, I hasten to add. But can you imagine how if the oppressors still place conditions that are untenable on the Gazans? It may not be Hamas. It may be some other organisation may emerge from the mess that has been created by the IDF and Israel. And you know, one of the things that intrigues me the most is the hate that Israelis generate. Not all of them, far from it. There are a lot of Jewish people who are absolutely ashamed of what the IDF have done. But there's a lot of Israeli people who despise Palestinian people. And you just need to have a look. Well, so does it resolve the issue in the West Bank? So does this mean now that the people on the West Bank, if they're able to rebuild Gaza, and Gaza has its own government and so on, I don't know how you rebuild a place that's been so destroyed, but I guess they did that in Germany after the war, and the same with Japan and some other European countries. So, and UK for that matter. So, I guess it's possible. But then I reckon that some major corporation with its hand out to Trump is going to win contracts worth billions of dollars to do the rebuild and capitalise on it. And that corporations will rip the world off who want to rebuild Gaza for all the right reasons. But corporation and corporate greed is likely to take hold and just be a pit full of money that people can delve into in order to satisfy their own greed at the expense of the Palestinians. My guess is that eventually that's what's going to happen. This also goes on to say the plan says Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza, and the ISF will train vetted. I don't know whether I believe that actually, but anyway, vetted Palestinian police forces to eventually maintain internal security. Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza territory it occupies to the ISF. This is the who's the ISF? Anyway, internal security forces or whatever they are. Practically, the IDF hand over Gaza territory it occupies the ISF. The plan says, but notes that Israel would also maintain a security perimeter. Of course, they will. Presence that will remain until Gaza is properly secure from the resurgent terror threat. No! Come on, bear with me, folks. That ain't going to happen. That's just a pipe dream. That's just... So they're going to maintain... Let's just try and understand all this. So let's work through this together because it's a friggin' headache. Because it's full of so many holes, isn't it? Don't you reckon? Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza territory it occupies to the ISF, the plan says. But notes that Israel would also maintain a security perimeter presence that will remain, like they have for the last 30, 40 years or whatever it's been. So the IDF and Israel are still going to treat the Gazan area and the Palestinians as they had for all of that time. And you've got to remember, there was a time when Israel financed Gaza Even though they restricted their water supply and food and electricity, right, and controlled all that stuff, they supported what happened in Gaza. Gaza, I've never been there, but my understanding is that Gaza itself was quite a vibrant place. They had universities, they had lots of hospitals, they had health plans, they looked after their people. This is under Hamas. Done terrible things, granted, but nevertheless, as a political organisation, if you lived in Gaza and you probably weren't happy with them and you wanted to get rid of them and you couldn't because they never held elections, blah, 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 they were able to build shit. And people were able to have a sustainable life. Maybe not the best life, but a sustainable one. What have those people got now? Nothing. And who's responsible for that? Friggin' Israel are. So, Netanyahu, the terrorist of our time, said the plan achieved Israel war aims. Said the plan achieved Israel. No, you didn't. You moron. You overgrown sack of shit. What you wanted to do was to destroy, and you've said this. He's made comments about from the river to the sea, for which the Palestinians get blamed for. He's said exactly the same thing. And the extreme right within the Israeli government, they want the Palestinians eradicated off this planet. They want genocide. All of this, the whole process, everything was about genocide to start with. And so, I'm now questioning why it is that they would choose to support this. Is it because the Trump administration said you've got to find a solution or we're going to stop funding you? So that would mean that all the organisations who in Israel, of which there are many, who benefit from war, would find that their stocks would fall, their profits would be less, and the world would be less interested in what they have to distribute worldwide. Is that the problem? So, who knows? So to finish this off, the leaders did not take questions at a White House press conference where they outlined the positions on the deal. A reporter asked if any Palestinians had been consulted on the plan but was ignored because the chances are they weren't. Right. Are you with me still? I see a number of you are. Very good. Qatar and Egypt have shared the plan with Hamas, whose negotiators said they would view it in good faith. An official briefed on the talk told the Reuters news agency some Palestinians in Gaza expressed scepticism. Don't blame them one little bit. It's clear that this plan is unrealistic. Computer program Ibrahim Judah told AFP from his shelter in the so-called humanitarian zone of Al-Mawasa in southern Gaza. It's drafted with conditions that the US and Israel know Hamas will never accept. Whoops. And so we need to, okay, so they're presenting something to the rest of the world that they will assume the rest of the world will say is fantastic. We love what you're doing. And Hamas will see through the bullshit and say, no, we don't agree with this because we don't believe for a moment that you will be able to uphold your part of the deal. So that's so. If you've got any thoughts about that, please. There's been lots of comments. Both want the other to disappear on this planet. I don't know who McGuffey's saying this. So 2 bricks tacking. Oh, what have I done? That wasn't the one I meant. I don't know whether or not. Right. Operate. Someone, Mark has said, clear that one. Mark has said, Operation String Them Along. I agree. 100%. That's what it's all about. So, McGuff, I'll see if I can put yours up again. Nope, get rid of that. Pop this one up. This is the problem when you have to do things all right. Both are evil in my mind. Both want the other side to disappear off this planet. Yeah, I think I won't disagree, McGuff, with that. I think that to some extent that's probably relatively true. I think, though, to be fair, on either side, there are moderates. And that somehow we need to see them, the moderates' view, and that's important. So there's this one here. Done that. Try again. Not worth the paper that deal is written on. Worthless. Trust at your own peril. Couldn't agree more. It's horrible. Both are evil, the US, Britain. The US, Britain is not real or the world's greatest, other worlds. The US, Britain and Israel, I think they're saying, not real, are the world's greatest terrorists. Look, I'm not disagreeing with that either. I think that any country that imposes its will on another country and are not elected, invited into that country, they're terrorists. Quite simple, really. Don't have an issue with that either. I says Trump's only place in the peace plan is as a defendant in the War Crimes Tribunal. Yep, don't disagree with that either. This other one by M. Beach. Trump let Netanyahu make a plan he can drive through. Yep, I agree 100%. So, okay, let those thoughts roll in. I've got some other stuff I wish to talk about. I don't know, about 38 minutes, but still a number of people online. We've had a number of views. That's really good. So the other one, in this question I'm asking at the beginning is, will Australia become as toxic politically as the United States? Because that's the question I asked initially. If you want to make a comment about it, please do. And McGuff says USA is not to blame for funding, is to blame for funding. I could agree 100%. And any country that has, has sort of shot themselves in the foot. So the other one that interests me was Donald Trump will send troops to war-ravaged Portland in latest deployment to US cities. And the question I'm asking around that is that this is part of the toxicity that we see, and whether or not it is likely that this sort of behaviour is likely to take place in Australia. Well, no, it won't. Simply because we don't have that Parliament issues activities in terms of the Defence Forces, and we don't have executive orders in the same way that they do in the United States. But it is an interesting sideline because US President Donald Trump says he will send troops to Portland, Oregon, authorising full force if necessary. So using guns, shooting people, because that's the way you do it in the United States, to prevent federal immigration facilities from domestic terrorists, as expands his controversial deployment to more American cities. And if you've watched any of the videos, you will note that there's nothing happening in Oregon, in Portland. That it's peaceful, it's calm, it's just like a normal, I don't know what a normal American city is these days, but there's no reason. It's all made up. It's all crap. And can you imagine if in Australia Albanese says, oh, look, we're really upset with what's happening in Victoria because crime is way out of control. and that we're going to send in the military to patrol the streets, there would be riots in the streets in Australia if that ever happened, as there have been in the United States. It would just be, it's antithetical to everything that we stand for, and it's wrong. Portland, democratic city, is one of several so-called sanctuary cities. That's the reason why they're doing it. There is no strict definition for sanctuary cities, but the term generally describes places that limit cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement, so on. So ICE. Mr. Trump announced on social media on Saturday, local time, that he was directing the Department of Defence to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland. It wasn't war-ravaged, it's just bullshit. That, when I watch Sky News and I listen to right-wing commentators, which I do far too much of, I come to realise that, and I wonder, look, am I wearing a specific set of filters that only sees one perspective? That, am I missing something here? Is there something that's just going over my head or around me, or something that I don't see? Because if I see bullshit from any side of politics, I'm quite happy to call it out. If someone behaves in a way that I know is going to damage another group of people, I will call it out. And I've done that for years, professionally in particular. So I'm not going to stand back and watch it happen regardless of what political stripe someone has. But I have to admit, and I don't know if do any of you feel the same way? Like when you're watching right-wing commentary and you realise that the type of bullshit they're spreading is so ill-informed and is designed to hurt people. In fact, basically, it's cruel. What they are insisting is cruel. It's like, I don't really want to go there, but I will. So the immigration debate. So we know that in this country we can argue, and rightfully so, that there are too many, that the immigration rate is too high. So we've got to be careful. So when you say things like God, not God necessarily, but when you say things like there are too many immigrants in our country, right? Immediately, you're saying those people that are in this country who are immigrants, right, of which are all of us, unless we're Indigenous people, we've come from somewhere else. We don't go back 60,000 years and can say that, our relatives grew, some of our relatives, go back. This is their land, their country. So when we talk about immigrants in those terms, sometimes we're saying, well, you're not welcome. You're not welcome. And I think I had a post here, I don't know whether I've got it or not, about Hasty making a statement in relation to all of this. No, that's not it. That's not it either. I haven't got it in now, but I know that Hasty in the Liberal Party made a comment, Andrew Hasty, about that it's no longer like our own home. That this place, because of immigration, it doesn't seem like our home. F off. You are a moron. And it's statements like that make me think, hey, hold on. What is there? We've had immigrants in this country since it was colonised. Who are you talking about? What element is there within this country that would make you think that you don't feel welcome in your own home? What is happening that would make a man of his intelligence to even suggest such a thing? And the only reason I can think of is that someone like Hasty wants to take over the Liberal Party, wants to take over Susan Lee's job, and he wants to spread division. This is the shit that Albo's been warning against. And we're starting to see it rear its ugly little head. And it's wrong. It's wrong. And I would have expected someone like Hastie to do a little bit better. But this is what we're going to be dumped with now. And this is why I asked this question to start with. Because basically, we're going to find that we're having to push back against the likes of Andrew Hastie and Pauline Hanson and Senator Bobbart and, all the others that sit on the right, because they will see this as a Trumpian response to what we have happening in Australia, and they're under the false belief, and it is a false belief, that Australia needs to have a Trumpian response at all, because we don't. Australians hate Trump, don't want Trumpism here. Yet these people can't seem to see the light at all. They're blinded by the reality that these sorts of discussions are unhelpful. The discussion around immigration is helpful, but the way they present it in terms of us and them is wrong and divisive and needs to be called out for what it is. And I'm going to go now to I don't know whether. Oh, hold on. No, this is it. No, I have got an article here on it. Hold on. Where was I? Oh, right. Yeah, I have. Pardon me, folks. This is the problem when you're just on your own trying to organise shit. Anyway, Lee brushes off Hastie's immigration claims, saying daily living pressures nothing to do with any immigrant. And she's right. And this is the problem that they have, is they're conflicted, because one side of the political spectrum wants immigration to be the discussion, whereas Susan Lee, to her credit, is saying that it's about standard of living, and that's fine. Opposition leader, unconcerned by speculation over possible Liberal leadership tilt by Shadow Home Affairs Minister. Right, fair enough. The opposition leader, Susan Lee, does not believe Andrew Hastie is after her job. Well, Susan, get your head out of the sand, because he is, and has subtly rebuffed the claims that immigration levels are making Australians feel like strangers in our own home. Lee declined to endorse Hastie's comment when asked about it on Monday, instead blaming the government for not building the infrastructure needed to cope with a growing population. Well, there's another argument about that that we could do it another time. I'm not going to do that here now. You see for yourself how the lack of infrastructure is contributing to the struggles that people are facing every day, she told reporters in Albury. This has nothing to do with any migrant or migrant community, but this is a reprehensible failure of government and put the infrastructure and services in place that Australians deserve. They refuse to be drawn on whether Hastie's remarks were divisive, and they are, or unhinged for the Liberal Party as it conducts a post-election review of its policy agenda. I'm very confident with all my colleagues are expressing strongly held views, and they do that in many ways, she said. Right, go Susan. Don't buy into it. And I think, in a way, that's a good sign. The Liberal Party, to their credit, are going to take some time to settle down, think about the destruction that's just took place during the last election, and now what are they going to do about it? This is their thing. Fine, go and do it. And hopefully you'll come to a point whereby you won't lambast immigrant people simply because, like us, like most of us, we've lived here forever, and that we've lived here, well, anyway, most of us have lived for generations, but we weren't the first people here. That was First Nations. And obviously we need to view this situation differently and not made to feel that immigrants, whoever they are taking over from us, and this is no longer our country. We don't feel at home. It's a crazy thing to say. I'm very disappointed in Andrew, and I'm sure he realises how disappointed I am in him as well. Right, I'll finish with this one. So, Freya Leach. Now, I've posted about this before because I posted about Freya's crazy Sky News shit. And so Freya Leach is Sky News. Now, I don't know whether you know who Freya Leach is. She's a young woman. She's only 22, I think. And she was given a show on Sky News called Freya Fires Up. And she got fired up all right. She actually got fired because she had a guy on who just expressed blatant Islamophobia. And that as a result, she got canned. First instance was told that the show was going to be, she's had to record a show, and the programmer, the guy that programmed or was in charge of the show, he also got drawn across the carpet. But the point about all this is Sky News' and the Murdoch's effort to gather together the very votes that they don't have. This is their need to build the young vote. And so they get someone on Freya, who is young, who's got very strong political views, stood for the Liberal Party in a seat, failed, but it was a Sydney seat. It was in a suburb seat. She failed. She was terrible. The bottom line was, she was terrible. I was quite excited about her staying on because at the end of the day, she'd just make everybody look so foolish, or make the station look foolish. So it was called Freya Fires Up Show cancelled, but presented to remain as co-host of a different program. So this is the dude with the bacon on his sleeves, which is a reference to Muslims. A Sky After Dark program which aired a highly offensive diatribe against Islam by a far-right guest wearing a shirt festooned with raw bacon rashes has been axed after 6 weeks on air, while the new Sunday night show Freya Fires Up has been cancelled. Its presenter Freya Leach will remain as co-host of Sky's The Late Debate, which airs 4 nights a week. And she's with that because there are adults on the panel who will probably keep her in check. Leach is the Director of Youth Policy at the Menzies Research New I Need to Say Anymore Centre and a former Liberal candidate in New South Wales. My point being is it was sad that she fluffed it and sad that she lost her job because she would have been fun to have watched. But it is an indication of where Sky News and Murdoch Press are going, and their recognition that the vote that they're losing is the young person's vote. And they needed a young person to come on board and lift that potential viewership up. And they failed again and again, and will continue to do so. Because Peter Credlin and James Morrow and the guys on After Dark are just not cutting it anymore. They really aren't. So, before I go, I just want to say, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Thanks everybody for coming on board. This is a large viewership. I really do appreciate it. Remember that on Thursday afternoon, Avery and I get together. It's a much livelier chat because I'm chatting with him. I do want to remind you too that if you want to come on board and have a conversation with me at any particular point about any subject that you want, please do. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Just email me, send me a link, whatever it is you can do. Just comment in a section, send me your details, and we'll organise a time to catch up. And most times, the best time would be a Wednesday afternoon. So let me know if you're so inclined and you want to come on here and have those conversations. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, please keep you and the people that you love safe.